I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru, the country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear.
Somewhere inside the royal household this year, Catherine's name was quietly written onto an official record, and with it came a power the palace has not handed a Princess of Wales in more than 100 years. It is not a crown. It changes nothing in the line of succession. Yet the moment word of it slipped out, royal fans could speak of almost nothing else, because the last woman to hold this exact privilege did so in 1910, just before she became queen. And Diana, the most famous Princess of Wales who ever lived, was never once given it.
I do think it's incredible how strong and how you've been able to cope, really. And I put that down to your really early years, childhood experience, but also the relationship that you've got. You're amazingly close.
Yeah.
And yes, you know.
The quiet signal. Here is the thing about the royal family that almost everyone misses. The biggest moments rarely happen out on the balcony. They happen in paperwork, in permissions, in small administrative doors that swing open behind the scenes and quietly rearrange who holds real power and who only holds a beautiful title. And this year, one of those doors opened for Catherine. Picture a clerk somewhere inside the machinery of the household, sliding a single confirmation into the record. No cameras, no announcement, no fanfare at all. King Charles had given his blessing for the Prince and Princess of Wales to begin granting royal warrants of their own, starting in the spring. A single sentence in a household record, easy to overlook, easy to forget entirely. It sounds procedural. It sounds like a line you would scroll straight past. But stay with me, because folded inside that dry little sentence is a signal about the next reign that the palace was in no hurry whatsoever to say out loud. The Royal Warrant Holders Association confirmed it, and somewhere in a quiet newsroom, a royal correspondent read that confirmation twice, set down their coffee, and went still, because they understood they were looking at something with a very long shadow stretching out behind it. A royal first. To understand why that correspondent froze, you have to understand how rare this actually is. Granting a royal warrant is not a ceremonial courtesy handed to every senior royal who waves for a crowd. It is a specific guarded power, reserved for a very small circle at the very top of the institution. And Catherine is now the first Princess of Wales to hold it in more than 100 years. Not in a decade, not in a single generation, in over a century. Picture the woman who held it last. Her name was Mary of Teck, grandmother of Queen Elizabeth II, and she granted her warrant in 1910 on the very edge of a new reign just before her husband became King George V. Sit with what that timing tells you. The privilege arrived at the doorstep of the throne, in the final months before a crown changed hands. History does not line up like that by accident, and anyone watching it line up again around Catherine already knows exactly how Mary's chapter ended, with a crown on her head. The missing name. And now the detail that made the whole story catch fire, because there was one Princess of Wales in between, one woman who held the exact same title, who captivated the entire planet, who was more famous than almost any royal alive before or since, Diana. And Diana was never given this power, not once. The privilege just placed into Catherine's hands was quietly withheld from the most beloved Princess of Wales the modern world has ever seen. In the careful, coded language of the palace, who receives a privilege and who does not is a message all its own. For Diana, the title was the ceiling. For Catherine, the title has become a door. And before we step through that door together into what it could truly signal about the reign still to come, take a moment to subscribe, because this whole story is unfolding in exactly these small, easy-to-miss decisions, and you are going to want to be right here when the next one lands. What a warrant means. Let me pull back for a moment and explain what a royal warrant actually is, because the real weight of this is so easy to miss. A royal warrant is a formal mark of recognition granted to the companies and tradespeople who supply the royal household. It gives them the right to display the royal arms on their products, their packaging, even the front of their shops. And that small crest is not decoration. Picture a family firm that has quietly supplied the palace for 3 generations. That crest above their door is one of the most trusted symbols of quality in the country. A direct line to the crown, worth more to them than any advertisement they could ever buy. which means the person who grants that warrant holds real, concrete influence. They decide, in a quiet but unmistakable way, who gets to carry the crown's endorsement out into the world. It is soft power in its purest form, the kind that shapes reputations without ever once raising its voice. Catherine now holds that pen, and a warrant is never only about business. Underneath it sits something the monarchy guards far more jealously than money. Underneath it sits trust, and trust is the one currency a crown can never simply print more of. And right now, that trust is flowing in exactly one direction. The rising princess. Now watch where it is flowing, and the pattern becomes impossible to unsee. This authorization did not fall out of a clear sky. It landed in the middle of a year in which Catherine has quietly become the center of gravity for the whole royal family. She has been described, more and more often, as the steadiest figure the firm has, and in 2026, its single most important one. After a stretch where her health and her children rightly came first, she has been rebuilding her public role one appearance at a time, each one small on its own and unmistakable the moment you line them all up. A guided walk through the Peak District, her support for the Rugby Football League, a visit to a children's trauma therapy service in Bradford, a trip to Scotland where, more and more, she is the one at the center of the frame. Add her role as Colonel of the Irish Guards, her patronage of a children's hospital reaching back to 2018, and her work on early childhood development that has carried her as far as Italy this year. None of these are idle days out. They are the building blocks of a future queen deciding, in real time, exactly how she means to lead. And the royal warrant power is the quiet institutional stamp sitting beneath all of it, confirming on paper what every appearance has only hinted at. But the road that brought her to this moment was far darker than most people remember. A difficult road. Because not long ago, this chapter looked like it might never be written at all. In early 2024, Catherine stepped back from public life after a cancer diagnosis. And for a long, uncertain stretch, the country simply did not know when, or fully whether, she would return to the front line of royal duty. She spoke about it with a directness that caught people off guard, and then she went quiet and she healed, largely out of view. So when you watch her in 2026, steadily being handed more, standing at the center of more, carrying more, it lands with a weight no list of engagements could ever capture. This was not a privilege set down gently on a silver tray. This was a woman who walked back from something genuinely frightening and picked the responsibility up again with her own two hands. And that is precisely why the timing of this palace decision has so many people leaning in. Because a privilege withheld for an entire century does not simply reappear by chance, and the question of why it reappeared now, around her, is where the real story begins to turn. The crown question. So here is the question everyone keeps circling, the one that refuses to die down in comment sections and quiet royal conversations alike. What does this actually mean for the crown, and for the woman currently standing beside the king? Let me be careful and honest here, because this is exactly where speculation runs wild and the facts get thin fast. Nothing about this decision changes the line of succession. William remains heir apparent, Charles remains king, and Camilla remains queen. But there is a quiet constitutional truth underneath all of it, worth understanding plainly, without drama and without invention. A queen consort's role is tied to the reign of the monarch she is married to. It is a role of the present reign, not an inheritance that carries automatically into the next one. When one reign ends and another begins, the shape of royal authority naturally resets around the new king and the new queen. That is not a scandal. It is not a plot, or a betrayal, or a secret war. It is simply how this institution has always worked, reign after reign, for centuries. And it is exactly why a privilege handed to Catherine now, on the very edge of a future reign, reads to seasoned royal watchers as one door swinging open toward tomorrow, while another chapter, gently, begins to close. The best of Britain. And here is what makes the whole thing feel so deliberate. Catherine and William are not sitting back, waiting to be told what their future looks like. They are already building it, out in the open, one decision at a time. The couple are reportedly planning to use at least one engagement a month to shine a light on British businesses and on the unsung community heroes who almost never make the headlines. The emphasis of their year, by every account, is the best of Britain. Ordinary people doing genuinely extraordinary work. Now, look at how neatly that fits with the royal warrant power they have just been handed. One is a formal endorsement of British business, stamped with the crown itself. The other is a public campaign built entirely around celebrating it. Put them side by side, and the outline of the monarchy this couple intends to run comes sharply into focus, less distant, more connected, aimed squarely at the everyday strength of the country, rather than the gilded ceremony above it. This is a future king and queen quietly deciding, well ahead of time, what they want the crown to stand for. And their ambitions, it turns out, do not stop at Britain's shoreline. A reign in waiting. Because this reaches far beyond Britain's own borders. Both King Charles and Prince William are expected to make separate trips to the United States, in what has been described as part of a wider diplomatic effort reaching into the highest levels of government. William's visit is expected later in the year, timed around the World Cup being hosted across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Charles, of course, remains the sovereign, and this reign is very much still his. Nobody is suggesting otherwise. But watch the accumulation. Every diplomatic mission handed to William, every institutional power handed to Catherine, every quiet line in the record naming her as the family's steady center. Each one adds another sentence to the very same story. A future is being prepared, carefully, deliberately, one authorization and one handshake at a time. The monarchy has never announced its transitions with trumpets. It builds them in advance, in paperwork, and in precedent, long before the public ever notices the change has already happened. And this single royal warrant decision may be the clearest preview yet of the reign quietly waiting in the wings. What comes next? So, when you see that headline asking what a palace document could mean for Catherine, now you understand why so many people cannot stop talking about it. It was never one dramatic cinematic moment. It is a pattern, finally becoming visible enough to take in all at once. A privilege not granted to a Princess of Wales in over 100 years. A power quietly withheld from the most famous woman ever to hold the title, and now placed directly into Catherine's hands. A steady, deliberate widening of her role in the very year she is being called the family's most important figure, arriving after a road far harder than most people will ever fully understand. None of it crowns her tomorrow, but all of it points, unmistakably, in one single direction. If you found yourself seeing the royal family even a little differently just now, subscribe so you do not miss where this story travels next, because the pieces are still very much in motion. And I want to hear from you on this one. Do you think Catherine is being quietly prepared for a very different kind of queenship than any that came before her? Or is the palace simply catching up at last to what the public decided years ago? Tell me down in the comments. I read them, and this is exactly the kind of story I love to dig into with you.